What does it take to recover from burnout? In today's interview, artist Erika Wiseman will talk about her struggles with imposter syndrome, burnout, and how she was able to recover. Hi, I'm screenwriter Pietro Schito, and welcome to another Schoolism interview, hosted by the talented Bobby Chiu and presented by Write for Animation, my YouTube channel where I help you boost your storytelling skills. Erika is an independent illustrator with a whimsical art style and a whopping 250,000 subscribers. But before we get to Erika's exciting journey, here's a trailer of story-driven illustrations by another independent artist, Jamila Knopf, which is one of the many courses you get by subscribing to Schoolism. Enjoy!
Hi, my name is Jamila Knopf and welcome to my class Story-Driven Illustrations. I'm an independent artist from Germany. And over the last few years, I have been fortunate enough to work on my passion projects full-time and to create illustrations that are personal and meaningful to me. But my college degree is actually in teaching, not art, so I'm excited to bring these two things together and to share my knowledge with you. In this 8-week course, I am going to be walking you through the whole process of creating an illustration, from start to finish. From generating ideas all the way to adding final details. We will be covering technical things such as perspective, composition, and color and light, but also topics that are more process-oriented, like how to deal with a blank canvas, how to use reference, how to handle revisions, and how to evaluate your own work. My main goal is to break down the process into manageable chunks so that you feel confident in painting complex scenes. Each lesson is accompanied by an assignment to put the principles that we're talking about into practice. And if you follow along, you will learn how to compose images that establish an emotional connection, and you will have 3 finished story-driven illustrations by the end of the class. The course is basically an overview over everything I know about illustration, and I can't wait to pass all of that on to you. Sign up today at schoolism.com.
Hey Erika, how's it going?
Hi, good.
It is so awesome to have you on the stream. Your illustrations, your artwork, it just puts a smile on my face, even as I'm just kind of glancing at this one right here and this one, of course. How would you kind of describe your artwork to people? That can be a hard thing sometimes, but how would you do it?
Yeah. I think I would describe it as, I always hear a lot of people say like very colorful and whimsical and just generally very happy.
Makes sense. And you know what? That's a really great kind of feeling that spreads, right? It's like the happy feeling, the kind of whimsical kind of feelings. No wonder your Instagram following currently is like 250,000, almost slightly over 250,000 followers. Do you still remember when you started off?
Yes, I do actually. Yeah,
I'm asking this. Let me just put some context for the viewers. Sorry.
Okay.
Because how many artists are in your family? Not many, right? Zero.
Not really.
Not many, no.
Yeah.
You also live in an area, you grew up in an area where the art community wasn't particularly thriving, I would say.
Yeah, we have like a kind of like a fine arts scene like in Louisville, Kentucky, but not really anything like what I do.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, we set the stage here and now you're starting on social media. How did that go for you?
So it was very slow at first, but it was actually my brother who like kind of pushed me to be like, hey, you should post your art on Instagram, because I'd been posting to like DeviantArt and Tumblr a little bit for a while, like I think since 2008, and in I believe it was 2016, 2015 maybe. He's like, hey, I'm seeing all kinds of artists pop up on Instagram, so maybe you should like put your art on there. So I started doing it, and I was actually trying to get myself to consistently like sketch and like practice outside of school, because in school I was studying fine arts, but outside of school I was doing stuff like you're seeing, like kind of more illustrative work with like characters and stuff. So yeah, I was trying to like do both, like study fine arts in school and then practice this outside of school. And Instagram kind of became my diary to like keep up with like learning and like consistency.
That's wonderful. So beginning, did you have a network of artists that you kind of, kind of grew up and grew your skills with, like even online?
You mean like kind of like a little community of people that?
Yeah, well, let me kind of say my thoughts here. If you didn't, that gets very difficult when you don't have any artists or whatever to kind of converse with, to start conversations, to start some likes, right? Because a post that has 0 likes and 0 comments and has very few followers has a very tough time to get those initial interactions.
Yeah. So I didn't really talk to anybody online. I was too shy. So I just kind of like posted my stuff and ran.
Yeah.
But then like once I started posting to Instagram and I would get comments, like I would, talk to people on there a little bit. I don't think it was ever super like consistent with the same people. But as I was doing this kind of art like on my own outside of like school, I actually was doing like I did like an Overwatch fan art piece, and they shared it on their page, like their Instagram, and that really started to like get some traction. And I started getting people like coming over to like check out my art from that. So like ever since that point and like being consistent, like it kind of, grew from there. And then people started doing draw this in your style challenges, and I jumped on those pretty early, and that helped with like reaching a wider audience. And Mermaid back in 2019, that was the first time I did that one. And so yeah, like it was pretty consistent as far as like growth on Instagram.
Now, I definitely want to get back to this topic here, but I also don't want to miss anything with this interview. And you were mentioning before that you were studying fine art in school, yet you were doing this on the side, the thing that you're truly passionate about. A lot of times our paths can be very unexpected. I started off in business management when I went to college, and then found myself in animation that I didn't really care about animation, to be perfectly honest, right? I wanted to just be a better artist, and that was a really tough program. Now, for you, how was your path to becoming an independent artist? Was it I know exactly what I want to do, Mom, that kind of thing? Or was it twists and turns?
Well, I kind of like, I've known that I wanted to like work as an artist since I was like 14. So like, probably around the time that I started doing digital art, which was in 2007. So like I had decided I want to be an animator, and I mean, it's changed since then. I kind of like shifted to wanting to do stuff with like visual development. But in either case, like I wanted to work in a studio because like that was what I thought was the only option. When I was at the University of Louisville, the only programs that they had were related to fine arts. They didn't have any even digital art classes, other than like a graphic design kind of thing. So I was going to school for fine arts, but I had like kind of this, desire to go to like an art school, like for animation or something like that. I already had the idea of what it could be, and I saw that this is not it. This is not exactly what I was wanting, but I was planning on, going to school for a couple of years and then trying to transfer to an art school that was like kind of close to me, where I could like come home on the weekends. Like it got to the point where, I had given up on going to a different school, but I was just going to finish out my degree in fine arts. And I was like, I don't know what to do at this point. So I ended up like trying to teach myself a lot of things. So I've never had like a class on like, or at that point, I never like took a class on digital art or like character design or anything. But I kind of would just like watch YouTube videos and just kind of do tutorials like online, like just see what I could do kind of thing. But I think through that kind of experience, learning on my own kind of taught me like how to teach other people. And that's kind of part of what I do now. So like making like tutorials, videos and classes and stuff. Like that was a really important part of learning how to do that I didn't even realize until like, years later. At the time I was like, this is not how I wanted it to go, but I actually learned a lot because of that.
And now the teaching is a great deal of your kind of profession now as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people can look for you on Patreon. You use Patreon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right on. What happens when you don't go to that big shiny school and then you start teaching? Did you ever have any of that kind of imposter syndrome there?
Absolutely. So, yeah, I started actually teaching, and I mean, I was doing some like tutorials through like and posting them on Patreon. I think I started doing that in 2019. That's when I opened my Patreon. And then in early 2020, 21 Draw contacted me to like do a course for them. And, I was like, oh, cool, I'll do this. But then like as I started doing it, I was like, oh no, am I qualified to do this? I didn't go to school for this exactly. But yeah, I really felt that imposter syndrome, and I was worried that I wasn't teaching the like right way, like the way that, like, I don't even know what the right way is, but whatever my way was, that wasn't the way, like in my mind. But I guess it worked out.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Now, I want to get back to the 2020 part of things when you were talking about difficulties and stuff like that, which we were talking before this interview, like, it didn't matter if you're successful or if it was just somebody new. Like, the pandemic affected us all in so many ways. So for you, I would love to ask you to share your experiences with like the pandemic and the burnout and things like that. I think it'll help a lot of people.
Yeah, so like we already kind of touched on the imposter syndrome, and I think that was just kind of the start of everything. At that point, I was still like wanting to, work towards working in a studio at some point. And so, I started teaching. I was already doing my Patreon. I was doing YouTube, and, I started getting other jobs here and there, like doing some stuff for 3D Total in one of their tutorial books, or a couple of them. I started live streaming with Adobe on Behance. I started doing so many different things, and like, as well as like, making paintings and stuff. And it got to the point where it was too much to handle all of those things at once, but I still felt like I wasn't doing enough. And I think maybe the imposter syndrome had something to do with that. It just became like too much at one point. And then I started kind of like taking things out, but I still felt really overwhelmed. And I think maybe it was because of the way that I was doing things. Like, for example, with YouTube, I started doing YouTube because I was just like, artists post on YouTube, they make YouTube videos, right? I'm going to try to do this. And if you would have told me that I would be making YouTube videos, like, 5-10 years before that, I wouldn't have believed you, because I was like a really shy person up until that point, I feel like. And, but I was just like, you know what? I'm going to do this. It's okay. So I started making YouTube videos just for fun. I would just make things that, like sketchbook tours, or like, just kind of random videos, anything that I wanted to make. And then I connected them to my Patreon rewards. And they were part of like my monthly kind of things that I do for Patreon. So I had like 2 videos that I made a month for YouTube on top of all the other things that I was already doing, which felt like too much. Like if it was just making 2 videos a month, I think I could have handled that. But like on top of all the other stuff, it was too much. So I cut it down to 1. And then that was too much. So then I stopped doing public YouTube videos, but then I would post them for Patreon still, which kind of defeats the purpose of like trying to cut things out. But that's what happened. Like it kind of like, it started out as something that I wanted to do, but then I like connected it to something that I had to do. And it didn't matter if I, felt like doing it, or I, like I had other stuff that was going on that, yeah, maybe I should have like taken out the YouTube stuff while I worked on the other things. But that's kind of like what happened with pretty much everything that I did. I kind of like twisted it into some kind of other thing than like how it started, if that makes sense.
It does. And I'm asking this because you've pulled out of that rut, right? So it's all a happy ending, everybody. But how bad was it, like at its worst? Like, was it like, I'm not getting out of bed today kind of thing, or?
Yeah, it was really bad. I mean, like I said, I was cutting stuff out, but I still felt overwhelmed. Like even at the like kind of what I thought was the bare minimum of what I like should be doing according to my arbitrary rules that I made up. So yeah, it just kind of got to the point where like I didn't want to draw anymore.
Yeah, I've talked with a lot of really interesting people over the years. Sometimes when somebody gets more and more popular, they perhaps get more popular than what they feel they deserve. Not that it's true or not, but that's how they feel, and then it becomes like those people that follow me feel like I paint up here, I make art this level, but I feel like I make art this level, and it freezes them to put new things online. Does any of this connect with you, or it's a different kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I didn't feel like a hesitation to like share things, but like I remember back in May of 2020, I was doing like Mermaid, and like I would make a piece and just be like, this is fine. Like it's fine. That's the like best compliment that I could give my work, was it's okay. And that was like kind of rare. I had something to say about everything that I made. I would have a hard time like loving it,
That's crazy, by the way. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I gotta stop at this piece for a second, because this one is my favorite character out of all the stuff that you sent me.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy to me that you would think that about your art. But it makes sense. I'm not saying you're crazy.
Yeah.
I definitely connect with that. Now, this piece here, what is the story behind this piece? Do you remember? Like what it's
that's a character from a game called Genshin Impact.
Oh, okay. So this fan art done in your own style.
Yeah. That's like one of my favorite things to do. I love like trying to like change the original character to like look more of like my own kind of style.
And program wise, do you use Photoshop, Procreate, something else?
So I mostly use Photoshop with my Cintiq, but sometimes I use Procreate with my iPad. Mm-hmm. So it just depends on how I'm kind of feeling.
Awesome. And when you're starting, do you start traditionally or you go straight digital?
Sometimes I do. I remember back when, it was probably sometime in like college or whatever, which was like 2015, like I wasn't comfortable sketching digitally. Like I noticed that whenever I did, it was kind of like wobbly and stiff kind of feeling. So I would pretty much exclusively draw in my sketchbook and then scan the sketches and then color them. But at this point, like I guess with coloring them digitally, like the traditional sketches, kind of like got better at the coordination part of it. And I don't know. I feel like now what I do is like I'll layer a bunch of like little sketches. Like I don't ever just draw like rough sketch, line work. It's always like, 4 or 5 passes on the same kind of sketch. And I usually keep most of it and just kind of merge it because I like to have that kind of life in my drawings.
And then when you're actually painting or drawing on the computer, do you draw from like a perspective where you're trying to get your character as large as possible, or like so your character takes up 100% of the height of the screen perhaps, or is it more like 50% or 30%? I'm trying to gauge because as many professionals know, beginners would be surprised on like the depth, like the distance that they draw at. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think like starting out, I am zoomed out quite a bit, and then I'll like with more detail, I will start to zoom in.
Right. So I guess, just to make sure I understand, you're starting off, you're zooming out to a point where it's more like maybe a big Post-it note kind of size. And then you draw in your rough gestures, zoom in a bit more, a little bit more detail, zoom in, more detail.
Yeah.
In general, doing fan art, I'm guessing that was very helpful for you in the beginning to gain a following.
Yeah. Yeah, but it also comes with a price sometimes, like especially with the Overwatch fan art. People would come over to my page from Overwatch, like their page. And I felt like I was kind of cornered into only doing Overwatch fan art for a while. And I mean, it was something that I liked to do. So I was doing it, but then I kind of stopped doing it as much. And I noticed that my original stuff, like people were not really interacting with it. But eventually I just had to like kind of leave it behind and move on and do more stuff, even if it wasn't getting the same kind of like traction as the fan art.
That sounds very healthy. It's like you're doing this for yourself. Earlier we were talking about the unhealthy period in your life, right? And I would love to talk about how you bounced back to where you are now. How did you get out of that rut?
Yeah, so it's kind of a more recent thing that I feel like I can actually say like I am out of that. That's crazy because it didn't seem like I was going to be able to get out of it. But what had happened in 2021, I think it was in October. I had, I guess, reached my breaking point where I needed to take a step back from everything. So I paused my Patreon. I ended up pausing it for 6 months. I stopped drawing for 4 months, which is the longest that I've probably ever not drawn, because I've been drawing ever since I was like small. But I just kind of like I couldn't do it anymore, and I didn't want to do it at the time. So I kind of like the first month that I took off, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna try to do other things that maybe I had considered like not as important, like doing more hobbies other than art related things again. Like I picked guitar back up, which is something that I hadn't done since the time that I started doing digital art in middle school. And like playing more like video games again, which is something that I kind of put aside, even though it's something that I love doing. So starting to do that kind of stuff. And then eventually when I came back to art, I came back to my sketchbook. And I have always loved sketching in my sketchbook. I have like, you know, a whole bunch of them on my bookshelf behind me. But those were from like college and high school and middle school. And I noticed that as, I started doing art full time, I stopped sketching as much just for fun in my sketchbook. It was like I was doing a lot more digital art that I was trying to finish, kind of like rushing through that process like as time went on. So I counted like, okay, well, I did this many pages this year and it's kind of went down since. So you know what? I'm going to finish this sketchbook that I started in probably like 2019. I think I started in 2019. So I have 45 pages left. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try to ease myself back into drawing, even though I was still at the point where I felt like a lot of resistance to it. Like I did not want to pick up that pencil again because I was scared that like, oh no, I'm going to feel bad or I'm going to, get frustrated with myself. But I kind of changed the rules with coming back to my sketchbook because I said, I am only looking to fill this book up. I'm not looking to draw anything good or pretty or whatever. I'm looking for that like quantity instead of the quality. And I kind of like thought about these rules that I had set up for myself over the years. Like, I can't draw the same thing over and over again, or I can't, do whatever. So I was trying to break those rules. I was like, you know what? You can. Let's draw a whole page of literally the same face. It doesn't have to be like postable or whatever. It can just be whatever. So yeah, those there were no expectations with that. Like I was trying to like throw the expectations out the window and just draw whatever. And I could scribble. I just needed to come back to it consistently. And that actually like helped a lot, like to put those expectations down that were, I think, really holding me back before. And I don't know, it helped me like ease back into drawing.
It feels like with some people, they get into this point where they take what they love, and because everybody else loves it, they start doing more and more of it to the point where they don't love it. And they feel like they put themselves on a treadmill.
Yeah.
I've definitely felt that as well. That's kind of like part of what you felt as well, yeah?
It was kind of like I would get people saying like, oh, can you make this? Like, can you make this kind of video? Or I want to see this kind of tutorial. And I didn't want to let people down. Like I felt like I was, going to disappoint people. So that, I think that was part of it. It got a little bit kind of people pleasy, like in that uncomfortable zone where I kind of decided things like, oh, I think this would be good to make and I think people would like it, but I didn't think about, do I want to do this? So that got kind of messy.
It's funny, like in the beginning of an artist's career, generally the trajectory, if it's a moderately successful one, it's like in the beginning, I'll do whatever. I have no opportunities here. Please give me something to do and I'll do it. And then they start doing it well and everybody around them is like, oh yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, let me give Erika another opportunity and another and another. And the whole entire time you've learned how to do more, say yes to everything. But there's, of course, a finite amount of stuff we can do. And you get to that limit and you don't know how to say no. It really messes with you to even say no to somebody because you might feel like you're just cutting off an amazing opportunity, perhaps for the future as well. At a point, we have to advise artists to like learn how to say no. And that becomes just as important as how you're able to take everything on.
Yeah. And it's not only like saying no to other people who are asking you to do things, but like telling yourself like, hey, you can't do all of these things that you want to do.
Yes. Well, also you're a creator. you're a self-employed artist, so it's like, when are you done today's to-do list?
Yeah.
Right? It's like never, unless you
No.
put an end. I hope this is connecting with a lot of people, because this is definitely connecting with me. Another thing that happened when I got to about 250,000 followers, I started to notice consistency wasn't really working as well anymore. That I had a period where every time I posted, my followers would go down.
Yeah.
That seems to happen to pretty much like most people with big followings. There's a point where they'll start to go down as you start posting more, no? You gotta figure things out.
My graph is like, dipping all the time, like way in the negative sometimes.
Yeah.
As far as like the followers gained in like a certain amount of time.
How do you think about that in a healthy way? Do you feel like you do?
I'm like, you know what? Like a lot of those people are probably just bot accounts. And if they decide to unfollow me, then, they probably wouldn't like the new stuff that I posted anyways, and it's okay.
Love it. That sounds very healthy.
Yeah.
That's a really great mermaid as well, by the way. That totally like distracted me. All right. Well, this has been such a wonderful, super interesting conversation with you. Now, if you could, this is something I ask generally everybody, if you could thank somebody from your past, somebody that taught you something very special, or did something for you that was really, really great, who would you want to thank from your past? What did they do?
Can they also be a part of my present?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So, I want to thank my partner, because I met him back when I was in high school, and like I said, I was really shy, and he's actually the one who he gave me the nickname Goober like way back then, and he kind of like encouraged me to come out of my shell and be myself, and always kind of inspired me to just like be me, and it's okay.
Fantastic.
And that's kind of where my name comes from, but it's like changed meaning for me over time. And like since going through all the like burnout stuff, now my name, Erika the Goober, is like a reminder to myself that to push aside the perfectionism kind of thing. It's okay to be silly and make mistakes or whatever. Everything's gonna be okay. Just be you.
I love it, Erika. I love it. Well, I want to thank you, Erika, for this time together, getting to know you and your stories, your thoughts. It's been wonderful.
Well, thank you so much.